Hello and welcome everybody to a PHA chat with HeartMath UK today. And I'm very, very pleased to be able to have Gavin Andrews from HeartMath UK with me to chat a little bit about what it is, how it started and how it can really help people on their health journey, I guess. So Gavin, I know you set it up over 10 years ago in the UK, but this has obviously been around since the 90s, started in the US. Would you like to go into a little bit of detail about the background of HeartMath and how you got involved with it?
Yeah, well, I'll keep that short because the actual story is weird and wonderful. I keep saying I'm going to write a book about it actually, or maybe get someone to make a movie about it. But the long and short of it is that in the early 90s, the founders came together from various different parts of the US, somehow found each other in the days before, internet and social media and stuff like that. And basically had been exploring all sorts of different personal development techniques and approaches and things. And what they realized was that actually it could all be crystallized to something as simple as emotional state, regulating emotions, basically. And that when you experience positive feelings and emotions, that really changed the way that you perceived the world, yourself, other people, and that when we tend to be better versions of ourselves when we're experiencing those positive emotions. So yeah, this group of people who realized this and realized that you could kind of actually sort of shortcut into that state through simple breathing techniques, thought, well, we better put together an organization then. So that was the start of HeartMath. Actually, we're a non-profit to begin with. And they were right place, right time. They're in California, and the whole internet tech thing took off in Silicon Valley. So they found themselves very quickly as basically it's like a personal development training company. And they were in a lot of the big tech companies, Motorola and Hewlett Packard and stuff. So they became, a viable organization. And then from there, really started to do their own research around this. So moving more into the science side as well, set up a research part of the business. And then from there became a tech company themselves, because what they realized was that these techniques that you could practice, that they were sharing with people that they knew worked, they worked out actually you could measure what was going on inside people in their physiology through their heart rhythms. And so then the technology became an important part of HeartMath because it was a way of sort of validating that what you were doing was doing something, and how it was working, and therefore enabling people to practice it. So that's the short version of kind of how they began in the US. And then that was the early 90s, 91 when they first got together. And then we've been around since 2012. So we're HeartMath UK and Ireland. Let's not forget our Irish brothers and sisters. So we look after Ireland as well, although that's become pretty tricky after Brexit. Anyway, that's another story. Yeah, we basically represent HeartMath over here. So I'm the lucky guy that gets to represent them. We sell the products, so the biofeedback technology, and also things like books and games and online programs, things like that. We also deliver training, so we train people to be coaches in the HeartMath system. So that could be people who are coaches or medical professionals or teachers or whatever. Yeah, I've been doing that since 2012. So yeah, just over 11 years now. Flying by.
Time flies.
It does.
And so kind of diving a little bit deeper into what HeartMath actually is for those that haven't heard of it. I had heard of it, but I wasn't completely au fait with the sort of the science behind it, how it works, and even how you do it.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll certainly do a technique or two together.
That would be
so
great.
That'll bring it to life. But so in terms of what it is, well, look, HeartMath is a brand name. So, things like mindfulness or meditation aren't brand names, obviously. HeartMath's a brand name. But what HeartMath really is, it's a system, and it's a system that includes some different aspects. So one of those aspects is breath work, or particularly what we call coherence breath work. So that's slow paced breathing, slightly deeper than you would breathe normally as well. It's balanced breathing. For many people, the breathing pattern's around 10 seconds, so 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. But actually, we've all got what's called an optimal resonance or coherence frequency. So for some people, it's a bit faster, some people, it's a bit slower. But basically, it's a breathwork aspect to it, which is what has initially a very profound impact on your physiology. So it's changing what your body's doing and what your brain's doing very quickly. The next part of the system is emotional self-regulation. So recognizing that while emotions can be reactions. We experience emotions because of things that go on outside in the world or inside our head or whatever, and that's normal and natural. Emotions can also be choices, so they can be intentional responses. So we can choose to place our focus on things like things that we appreciate or that we're grateful for, or I can choose to stop, looking at my inbox and worrying about the number of emails I've got, and I can look out at, beautiful trees in my environment, or the gorgeous blue sky that we've got today. So it's about recognizing that we've got some choice, and a lot of the time people just don't even know they've got choice, or they don't exercise a choice. So we know that there are benefits to kind of reducing unnecessary, unpleasant, negative feelings and emotions, and increasing the kind of ratio of positive and pleasant feelings and emotions. There's a lot of scientific evidence around that. There's an aspect which is based as well on actually kind of creating a connection with your heart, and that's partly physical connection, so building what's called interoception, or an awareness of your heart. So like literally feeling that area, literally even being able to feel your heartbeats. And again, there's a lot of science around the benefits of interoception in terms of being able to regulate your mood and your behaviours. You kind of get a lot of information from the body. But again, a lot of people are just not aware of it. They're living up here all the time. They don't really know what's going on here. But the more that you nurture a connection with the body, the more information you can get from it and do something with that information. And then I guess the most unique bit of HeartMath, because all of that's ancient wisdom, if you like, the most unique bit is the technology. So we have some clever gadgets. This is one of them. This is called an inner balance. And what this thing does is it measures your heart rhythms, and it enables you to intentionally control your heart rhythm. So a lot of people think, oh, you can't control your heart rate. Nothing you can do about it. It's one of those things that's under, unconscious control. Of course, most of the time it is, but you can actually control your heart rate. Many of us can bring it down if we're stressed through certain techniques, but what we're more about is changing the rhythm of the heart and putting the rhythm into what we call coherence. So a lovely pattern where the rhythm is speeding up and slowing down like a waltz. And that, again, science shows, has lots of benefits for the body and the brain, and keeping you basically physically and mentally healthy. And it has benefits in real time, and if it becomes a habit of practice, it then has benefits that can extend over longer periods as well. So that's what it is. It's a system of all those things kind of brought into one, bit like mindfulness, bit like positive psychology. This thing's a bit like a Fitbit for your emotions, but it's all of that joined together, basically.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. And I guess what you're talking about with the reactivity and responding, there is a difference, isn't there? And I think particularly what we do with PHA is about empowering people, and so empowering them to know that they can choose how they feel in any moment, any given moment, is really, really important, particularly when there's so much externally that can affect your mood. And we know that mental health crisis is at an all-time high. Is there any science around how being able to do this? I mean, I'm sure there must be, but around how it affects people's mental and emotional well-being when they feel that they can actually make those choices for themselves. They become more aware of themselves rather than constant reactivity. They are responding to situations in any given moment of time.
Yeah, well, you kind of explained what the science shows right there. So overall, what we see is that when people recognize they do have some choice, and we don't have choice all of the time. The stress is a natural part of our lives, and there are times when we'll be angry or fearful, and that will be entirely appropriate, of course, or grieving or whatever. But you're right in that a lot of the time we are just reacting when we do have an opportunity to be responsive, and we have an opportunity to intentionally choose where to place our emotions. And we do live in a world that's full of distraction. We live in a world where there's lots of messaging that kind of like predisposes people towards feeling confusion or fearful or worry or despair or whatever it might be. And often that's because they're just reacting, they're just consuming that information, and it's kind of, then becoming all the thoughts in their heads. But equally, we can choose to do something different. It's like, I like to think of it as like a diet. Once we become aware that there are other kind of options out there in terms of emotions, we can begin to actively source ones that would be better for us. So some of the benefits of practicing these techniques are, well, in general, you're reducing stress. So if we reduce stress, we reduce all of the unfortunate symptoms of stress. So people report, and there's science that shows things like reductions in depression or reductions in anxiety in general. But then some of the more specific symptoms of that, things like panic attacks, racing heart rates, reducing even things like arrhythmias, things like that, reducing skin problems. Then if you're looking at kind of the way that we tend to behave when we're stressed, it tends to bring out kind of unfortunately the worst in us. So improvements in relationships and communication, improvements in the ability to think more clearly and make better decisions. So there's a variety of sort of physical and mental health benefits. And that really is because what coherence is doing physically, it's helping your body go into balance. So it's balancing your autonomic nervous system, and it's putting you in an optimal state. And so when you're in that state, you're not stressed, and actually you're facilitating or promoting homeostasis, which is your body's own natural ability to repair and reorganize itself, regenerate itself, revitalize itself. So that's great, because when you're stressed, that gets compromised. One of the reasons why we get, ill and tired and depleted. But also, as we know, when we're stressed, the brain activity changes, and we go into the stress centers, and then that makes us really good at, fighting or running away or playing dead or giving up. Whereas, what coherence is doing in the brain is it's the heart, basically it's like the largest rhythm maker in the body. The heart goes into this lovely ordered pattern. The brain synchronizes, tend to go into sort of high alpha. So that's a state in the brain where you're able to be much more kind of clear and objective, rational, logical, but also more creative, more empathetic and compassionate. Again, it's kind of, the stuff that makes us human beings and brings out the best in us. So it's benefiting us physically, and it's benefiting us mentally, emotionally, and also in terms of our cognitive performance.
Sounds incredible. It sounds like what we need in schools, to be honest, doesn't it? I mean, if this,
well, it is, yeah,
how easy is it to learn?
Yeah, it is easy to learn. I mean, we have people who've trained with us as coaches, teachers or people that are just working in schools to help kids with emotions. And so, yeah, it's getting out there. I wouldn't say it's widespread, but we have schools that are using the techniques with kids. We have a number of schools that use the technology as well, particularly for kids who might have challenges, like they might have ADHD, or they might be on autistic spectrum or something like that, or they might be from challenging backgrounds where they're around a lot of dysfunctional behavior. So yeah, although it's not widespread, there are schools that are using the tools and the technology with those kids to help them self-regulate. But actually, increasingly, we've got schools who are using the techniques because all kids are experiencing a degree of stress. They're tested like crazy, and schools want to find ways to help kids, and they're also being told to help kids. Terrible levels of self-harm, mental health problems, as you said, and they're not really being given a lot of help by the government. So the schools that are being really proactive, some of those Find Us and other wonderful tools that are out there as well. And yeah, those that adopt it tend to find some benefits.
And so for those of us, because I am definitely including myself in this, that have an obscene number of thoughts and that let your mind run away. And I can feel, even when you're thinking about things, and a lot of the anxiety, I think, comes from future thinking, things that haven't even happened, that you're predicting almost is going to happen. And you can feel the heart racing, and you do get into this fight or flight state and struggling with sleep. Is it something that takes time to, is it almost like a rewiring the brain to trigger fire in different ways? How does it actually work for those that have almost been on this path for a long, long time, and then want to try and look at how they can actually slow down, bring more coherence, bring more awareness, I guess? Is it similar to like meditation? It's just a case of practicing regularly? Is it sort of just getting a bit more in the body? How do people find it? Have you noticed with the people that you've trained? Is there a pattern?
Well, it's all of that. I mean, it isn't magic. You do have to do it. The nice thing about HeartMath is you can do it with your eyes open, kind of in the moment. You can do it in the moment of stress. Actually, if you were sat in a meeting, you're worrying about what you had to say or something, you could be practicing the techniques there and then. So the nice thing is that you don't necessarily need to make specific time for it. In terms of what it's doing, then look, the breathing side of things is the way in. So for a lot of people, it's just about learning to breathe properly. And most people just don't. Unfortunately, they breathe far too quickly and shallowly. And a lot of the time, people are also holding their breath. So a lot of people, when they're stressed, hold their breath. A lot of people, when they're concentrating, unfortunately, hold the breath. A lot of people have what's called email apnea, where they're so kind of engrossed in what they're writing and making sure it's perfect that they stop breathing. It's a stress response, basically. So part of it's about becoming aware of that, and that can take time. I mean, some people take to this really quickly, and for other people it really takes a lot of practice to embed it as a new behavior. And so I can't say that well, just in 2 weeks of practice you'll be a master at this. It's different strokes for different folks, actually. And but what we know is that anyone can do it. When you do it, you will receive some benefits. It's just that some people are like very hardwired into their previous operating system of the way they breathe and the way they think and the way they behave. And other people are less hardwired in, so therefore it can be a bit quicker for them. So and if you had say like a condition, you've been depressed for a long time, you'd had an anxiety disorder for a long time, it might take quite some time to re-regulate yourself back to balance. But the way it works, and this is the same as well with things like meditation and mindfulness, or the research shows, is that you are changing the baseline. You're changing your neurological connections. You're changing your autonomic nervous system's operating baseline as well. So with practice, you will re-regulate your autonomic nervous system, which will mean that you re-regulate your stress response. You will gain the self-awareness that enables you to regulate your thoughts instead of, constantly thinking about the future and how much you've got to do. You'll recognize that you're doing that more frequently. You'll recognize that you can kind of breathe and bring yourself to a place of balance. And then you'll recognize that you could actually choose to place your thoughts and emotions on something else, even if it's just for 5 minutes, to say, I'm going to stop worrying about how much I've got to do, and I'm going to sit here and appreciate, how much I love my family, or how beautiful the flowers are in the garden, or appreciate that, I don't live in a part of the world where, things are as hard as where other people live. Anything at all, basically, whatever's real for you. So, I can't tell how long it would take, but I can say you get out what you put in, like all these things. There's no magic pill, but it does work.
And so I guess the gratitude aspect is a big one, is it? It's something that I've over the years done quite a lot of, particularly with the children, because I find that the way we live nowadays is very much a consumerism. So-and-so's got this, I've got to have this, and it's that sense of lack. So it's also almost like I'm trying to help encourage them, right? Well, if I can sit there, and I think it's really important as a family to do that, because even if they're not consciously doing it themselves, there must be a ripple effect in the family if you are noticing shifts in yourself and how you're responding to family members, to children, to spouses. It must have a ripple effect. Is that something that's quite common?
Well, it does. Look, at the end of the day, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's very hard to control other people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviours. It's much easier to control your own. And if you start to show up differently and behave differently, then the way, that dynamic, the way that you're interacting with other people will change. So you're more likely to see, as a result of you consciously regulating your thoughts, feelings, and behaviours, that they begin to interact differently as well. The gratitude piece is really important. There's a lot of research around gratitude, not HeartMath research, but Berkeley University have got a whole department dedicated to gratitude. We kind of, might sound like semantics, but we tend to focus more on appreciation. And the reason for that is that sometimes you can't necessarily be grateful for something, but you can still kind of appreciate it. You could appreciate, you might not be grateful for someone else's behavior, but you could appreciate where that behavior is coming from, or you could appreciate that they're trying their best, whatever. So it's kind of a subtle difference, perhaps. But yeah, certainly that sort of flavor of emotions, appreciation and gratitude, really important. And also, focusing on things like care and compassion for self and for others as well. And again, just live in such a really busy world that a lot of people just don't really spend their time focusing on those types of feelings. But we know the research shows that nurturing those types of feelings is really beneficial for us, but it's also beneficial for the people that we interact with as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think also that what we're trying to build within PHA, the community element of people and connection and coming together and being in service to others actually does make you feel much better, doesn't it? If you're having a bad day, they say go and do something for somebody else, and it actually makes you feel better about yourself. So I think it's a huge piece of the puzzle that is missing, because again, this sense of lack is significant across the board, particularly with social media and snapshot in somebody's life. They've got such an amazing life, and here I am. It's really important that we learn to appreciate, like you say, what we've got in the here and now. And even if you're having a bad day, there's something that you can find appreciation for, even if it's just a sunny day, or for the breath that is keeping you alive. I'm really keen, if you don't mind, to perhaps try a couple of techniques and allow others who are watching this on the recording to join in if they'd like to.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, we'll start with the absolute basics. So we like simple names and simple techniques in HeartMath. So our sort of foundation technique, if you like, is called heart focused breathing. And that's because what you're doing is you're focusing in your heart and you're breathing, basically. So we start with that. It's very, very simple. So yeah, just get yourself nice and comfortable. Almost all of the HeartMath techniques are designed to be used like in the moment with eyes open. You can have your eyes open while you do this one if you like, or if you prefer to close them, you can, it's up to you. But the idea would be that you could be anywhere and do this technique. Okay. So yeah, we kind of like sit comfortably, and then what I'd like you to do is just to shift your attention or your awareness into the heart or the chest area. Some people can place their awareness into their body. Some people really struggle. So if you struggle, simply putting your hand on your heart or your chest area can be a good way to shift your focus there. Actually, for many people, just placing their hand on their heart feels quite nice. And there's some interesting research that shows that in and of itself creates physiological changes and can release hormones like oxytocin. But yeah, we've got our kind of awareness, our focus in our heart or chest area. And then what we're doing is we're just starting to breathe nice and slowly, a bit more deeply than we normally would, and trying to pick up a nice, comfortable pace. We're ideally breathing in and out through our noses. And then the idea is that we're imagining as we breathe that our breath's flowing into and flowing out of our heart or our chest area. But what we want to make sure that we're doing as well is we are relaxing the belly. So the belly, is expanding and contracting as we breathe. But we're imagining that breath is flowing in and out of the heart or the chest. And then as we breathe, maybe trying to pick up a pace of, say, 5 seconds for the in-breath, 5 seconds for the out-breath, or potentially a little quicker or a little slower. What's more important is it feels comfortable for you. As we're breathing, we're then really trying to get the breath to be nice and smooth and sustained. So that's sort of, a nice, smooth, sustained volume all the way through on the in-breath. And then all the way through on the out-breath. It's as simple as that. We're just sitting, keeping the focus in the heart, imagining that breath flowing in, flowing out of the heart. Nice, slow, smooth, deep and paced breathing. Nice and comfortable though, not too deep, nice and comfortable. And so in effect, what you're doing, I'm just going to show you a little kind of diagram on the screen here. What will be happening when we're stressed, our heart rhythms tend to look very chaotic, like this top pattern. So what's happening there is basically that's a reflection of the autonomic nervous system. And the heart rhythm is speeding up and slowing down chaotically or erratically. Now, when you start to do the heart focused breathing, something very profound happens to the heart's rhythm. It shifts into this lovely, stable, ordered pattern. So this is what we call coherence, and the heart rate is speeding up and slowing down and speeding up and slowing down in these repeating cycles or oscillations. So that impacts the autonomic nervous system. And then that also, the rest of the body and the brain responds to that rhythm, kind of entrains to that rhythm. So the brain then begins to follow, and the stress centers in the brain will begin to deactivate, and the cortex, particularly the prefrontal cortex, will begin to activate, to come back online. So if you're stressed, the cortex deactivates, become very good at fighting, running away, or playing dead. When you get coherent, in effect, it says to the brain, you're safe, there's no threat. So the stress centers go, oh, we're not needed anymore. And then the cortex can come back online again. So then you can be much more, you're in control of yourself, basically. You can self-regulate. So you could choose a different behavior. You could choose different emotions. You're much more in control of what you might say or what you might do, as opposed to when we're stressed, where the stress is driving the behavior. So the foundation is just the breathing. And, you look pretty relaxed right now. So just stopping.
I'm really tired.
Yeah. So this is interesting. A lot of people say, oh, I feel really tired. Well, what's happening there is you've just let your body go into balance. When you go into balance, your body will give you very clear information about how it's really doing. So a lot of people go, but I feel so tired. You are tired. Most of us are tired. We do way too much. We deplete ourselves, our batteries, our inner batteries. We deplete them more than we renew them. Coherence is helping you kind of like top the battery back up again. But when you do, you get all this information from the body, which is going like, hey, this is how I'm doing. I'm going to give you this information. Can we have a rest, please? So that's pretty typical when people start. But don't give up just because you feel tired. It's important to do this. And the practice in and of itself is sort of topping the battery up. It's, like I said, it's helping you go back into homeostasis. But it is a great breathing technique to do before bed. Many people report that they then fall asleep a lot more quickly. So that's the basics. Heart focused breathing. You can do it anytime, any place. We've all got to breathe anyway. For most of the time, I would suggest the optimal way to breathe. Certainly, sat here listening to me, it's not an optimal way to breathe. It's not an optimal way to breathe if you're going to run for the bus. It's not an optimal way to breathe necessarily when you're sleeping. But for a lot of what we're doing throughout the day, actually, slow-paced breathing is the best way that we could breathe to just kind of keep ourselves in balance and keep ourselves, our brains, functioning as well.
And it is a mindful practice as well, isn't it? So you're actually
it's a mindful practice
away from the thoughts and focus on
you're focusing on the breath. Yeah. So we say it's a heartful practice because we're focusing on the heart, and actually in mindfulness, not the kind of Western secularized version of mindfulness, but if we think about, like Buddhist origins or many other forms of mindfulness and meditation that are more connected to a religion or a faith or a tradition, the heart is central to those as well. And particularly within Buddhism, compassion, the metta meditation, loving kindness meditation, that's a heart focused as well as, the breath and the mind being involved. So, yeah, that's the foundations. Then what we can do, if you want, we can add another aspect to that technique. So we'll start again just with breathing.
I'm going to fall asleep.
Hopefully not. I'll talk.
Apologies if anyone's watching this and you hear me snoring.
So we'll start with the heart focused breathing again, just focusing in the heart. And then remember, you're just sort of slowing, deepening the breathing a bit. You're imagining that the breath's flowing in, flowing out of the heart. So you're right, that is distracting you from kind of thinking and stuff. By placing your awareness, your attention in the body, it's harder to have the thoughts continuing to race and run. And then just by doing that, we'd be shifting into this lovely, smooth, sinusoidal pattern, the heart rhythms. And then because the prefrontal cortex is now more active, we can choose an emotion. So what I'd like to invite you and everyone else to do is to just recall someone or something for which you feel genuine care, appreciation, gratitude, or love. So it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a person, a place, memory, a thing. Doesn't matter, it just needs to be real. And it just needs to be, you know, in that kind of area of care, appreciation, gratitude, love, some sort of blend of all of those. And now that you've recalled that, you're literally just going to breathe the feeling in and out with the breath. So we'll just do that for a minute in silence and just enjoy that feeling. Okay, so just try to keep doing that as I'm talking, because the idea is that we're able to do these things, you know, throughout our day, remember. So that's called a quick coherence technique, because it gets you coherent quickly. Starts with the breathing, but then what's important with the emotional self-regulation, the intentionally experiencing, you know, pleasant or positive emotion, that in and of itself has physiological benefits as well. So when we feel different feelings, we release different hormones. And so if you're feeling, well, when you're doing that, you almost certainly, you wouldn't be producing any cortisol, or certainly not high levels of cortisol like you would if you were stressed. So that's good, because we don't want unnecessary levels of cortisol in the system. You'd be producing a hormone called DHEA, which is a vitality hormone. So that literally, you know, one of its jobs is literally to repair us on the cellular level. So we need adequate levels of DHEA. And that's one of the problems we can have when we're too stressed. We get too much cortisol, not enough DHEA. So we don't have enough of the stuff that sort of helps rebuild us. But if you found that you were really able to connect to sort of care, love, compassion, those types of feelings, you probably also be beginning to produce oxytocin, which I'm sure you've heard of and lots of people have heard of. It's, you know, the hug drug or the love drug. It's really important to have oxytocin in our systems, and it helps buffer the stress response. So when we have oxytocin, we feel safe basically, and we want to be around others. It's a pro-social hormone. So again, if we're experiencing lots of stress, we're not getting oxytocin. So if we're not getting oxytocin, we don't feel safe. One of the reasons why we don't feel safe. And also, we tend not to want to be pro-social. So, you know, again, it's just a simple technique, simply changing your breathing and simply choosing your emotion for a little while can have a profound physiological impact. Now, if you do that more frequently with your emotions, you're literally changing the ratio of unpleasant to pleasant emotions. You know, you just had 1 minute there where you're feeling something pleasant. You could have been feeling something unpleasant, like worry. It's a choice. And the more that we activate the choice, the more we can intentionally switch those ratios. So that has a knock-on effect to quality of life, because you're literally in control of deciding to feel better a bit more frequently. Not suggesting it's going to get rid of all of the stress and worry in your life. It's not, that's important information. But you're reducing the intensity and frequency and duration of kind of a lot of the unnecessary unpleasant and negative feelings and emotions, and the, you know, the physiological impact of that. And you're getting more of the pleasant ones, but also, you know, you're balancing the autonomic nervous system, so the body's able to look after itself in a way it can't when you're challenging it with stress. So, just simple techniques like that throughout the day. Become aware of your breathing, slow it, deepen it, balance it. Become more aware of your thoughts and your feelings. Choose pleasant and positive ones a bit more frequently. And then with HeartMath, once you've mastered it, you can actually then use the techniques to do things. So it's one of the differences with mindfulness, if you like, is you can then use the state of coherence to engage with a problem, or try and be more creative, or try and kind of be more intuitive with all the crazy information that's surrounded us. Like, what should I do? I don't know. Sometimes you just got to tap into your intuition and make a decision, basically. So we've got techniques that help with stuff like that. Techniques to help with communication. So, in a partnership or relationship, both parties getting coherent, and then engaging with each other more productively. So actually literally synchronizing their own rhythms to coherence to then engage. We could do that with groups as well, actually. Or things like even, planning projects, just doing it from a space of coherence as opposed to from the space of anxiety, worry, overwhelm, being rushed, confused, all of that type of thing. So that's what the techniques are doing. And all the technology is doing is it's measuring you while you're in it. So the techniques are what's important. The technology facilitates it. It's just like a way of training, basically. So if I just pop up my app, and I can show you. So every day I do 21 minutes intentional practice with the technology. That's just because I like gadgets and it's my way of building the habit. But then what you do is you're doing the techniques, and it's recording in real time your heart rhythm. So this is my heart rhythms I practice. You can see they're all nice and smooth and ordered. Yeah. And what it's doing is it's basically translating the data to levels of coherence. So it's assigning a score or a metric to how coherent you are. So what that enables you to do then is to use the biofeedback to work out, well, if I just, subtly change the breathing in that way, or if I tap on into that feeling or that memory or whatever it is, you can see that either benefits or doesn't benefit your coherence level. So it's just really a way of validating it, proving to you that you're doing something to yourself, which unfortunately, a lot of people give up on things like meditation and mindfulness because they just don't really know what it's doing. You can't feel it, and that's normal. The nice thing about the biofeedback is whether you feel it or not to begin with, it will tell you. It's not going to lie to you, but it will say you either are or you aren't coherent, and to what extent you are coherent or incoherent. And then after a while, what you find is you begin to build more of that awareness, bodily awareness and emotional awareness of when you are and when you aren't, and how to get more coherent, practice it and get better at it over time. But it needs to become a daily practice in order to be sort of hardwired in. And then what you have an opportunity to be able to do is to change your baseline. So if you had been, I've been this person, spent a lot of my time before discovering all of this, being very anxious and pushing myself too hard and catastrophizing and future projecting and all that type of thing. Over time, that all dials down. And you become much more sort of balanced. And then the nice thing is when you go out of balance, you notice it. So you can adjust and correct yourself much more easily.
I guess you are becoming more present, aren't you?
In mindfulness terms, it's the same thing. You're becoming more present. Yeah. So definitely a crossover in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. And I think with where we're all heading with this, building these communities, and we're kind of moving into this new earth where we have to work with people from a heart-centered place. This kind of work will really, really help people that are building these infrastructures now.
Yeah.
Grassroots movements. I mean, we've got so many hubs across the UK, I think about 70 now that are setting up, and a lot of them are doing it on the side of full-time jobs and caring. There's a lot of stress in their everyday lives, and then they're adding in this new thing that they want to do, but actually it's got to come with a different energy, hasn't it? And I think it's got to come from this energy, the heart-centered energy, but also the taking care of yourself and not pushing yourself. And this has to be done now. Let's build something naturally, organically, but in our own space, in our own time, and where we can all like you say, join together,
Yeah.
become coherent, do this training potentially together, and then make those decisions as a group and how you move things forward. I think it's a lovely synergy there with what we're doing. So if people wanted to find you, how could they? Do you obviously do training programs? Do you have many trainers in the UK, Ireland?
Yeah, we do. So they can find us at heartmath.co.uk. That's us. Then the US kind of head office, the mothership, if you like, heartmath.com. And then the non-profit, because now HeartMath is a non-profit and a for-profit, but the non-profit who do a lot of the research, they do all of the research, but they also do a lot of the kind of programs for veterans and schools and like all the kind of altruistic stuff, as it were, goes out of the non-profit. They're at heartmath.org. And between the three sites, there's lots of resources, lots of free resources as well, particularly on the heartmath.org site. So yeah, in terms of what we do, if people are interested, then we've got a free e-learning program called the HeartMath Experience. So that's a 90-minute kind of self-paced thing. It's free, so if you're interested, check that out on the website and get involved in that. Then we've got books. So we've got some books like Transforming Stress, Transforming Anxiety, Depression. We've got a book called Heart Intelligence, which is more about living from the heart. And then I guess the next step is, if you're interested in technology, then we've got the biofeedback technology as well. So yeah, and we do like 60-day money back guarantee on that as well. So try it out. If it works for you, great. If it's not for you, then there's no financial penalty there. And then we do training as well. So we train people to be coaches in the system. And then we have a network of coaches. Yeah, so it's about 500 HeartMath coaches across the whole of the UK and Ireland. They all specialize. They have HeartMath as a tool within what they do, but most of them also use other tools and approaches. So they might have different specialisms, might be relationships or leadership or kids or a specific thing like autism or something like that. So yeah, there's HeartMath coaches out there. Yeah, and if anyone has questions or wants to reach out to me, then best thing probably is to email info@heartmath.co.uk, and then I can answer any questions or set up a dialogue or whatever. So
be fantastic, and I will put all of those links into the description, so anyone wants to find you can do so easily. But thank you so much for a little bit more in-depth explanation of it. I know it can help, particularly with Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive function, and that I think would be a fantastic conversation for another time if we could do one again.
Yeah, I'd love to. There's specific use cases, and one of the most recent ones is the mental health space, and dementia and Alzheimer's in particular. Really exciting research findings there, independent as well. So I'd love to share some of that, and then and anything that you think fits into what you guys are doing and how this could be a tool for people out there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, Gavin. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed this too, and please do feel free to get in touch with Gavin if you'd like more information.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.